Thank you guys for tuning in, and I want to thank you as well for coming to the MBM Long Beach show. If you have an opportunity, don't miss the next show nearest to you. So you can go to mbm.com and find out where shows are at in your area. What I want to do is we want to get started with a wine bottle demonstration. I want to show you how to actually etch a bottle. There's lots of different ways, but I'm going to kind of go through a few simple ones for you. First, we're starting with a fairly inexpensive wine bottle. We have removed the front label of this particular wine bottle, leaving the back label intact. It's actually illegal to remove the back bottle or the back label. So when doing a wine bottle, you're really doing more of an etch that's, how would you say, a commission-based etch. You're not able to actually sell the wine, so people are actually going to be bringing you the bottle to do the etching. So in this case, we've removed the front label. Typically, in a wine bottle case, you're going to actually be putting on there some sort of personalization, some sort of wedding announcement, baby dedication, some event type piece. Great thing about wine bottles is you typically are not going to, once etched, not going to throw this bottle away because it's going to be personalized. It's going to mean something to you. Everything starts with, obviously, our artwork, our black and white artwork. This is a inkjet printed film on a standard inkjet printer. Good thing about inkjet printers is they give you good density, a good rich dark black. The way you would go about making the stencil, real quickly, is you're going to expose your image onto the photographic film. We're using the 5mm stencil here. Expose it for 20 seconds, rinse with water, whether by hand or with our automatic washout system, and that will give you a mask. Everything requires a stencil or a mask. In this case, this mask was generated, made. After it was produced, we've actually applied our cover paper to it. Cover paper allows you to actually store that stencil long term. So you can actually make your masks ahead of time and actually store that stencil for any indefinite period of time. To get started here, what I want to do is I want to take my wine bottle. I've cleaned the surface, and I'm going to take a Sharpie marker, which is a white water-based marker. I've got 3 rolls of tape here, and I'm simply going to create an alignment spot for my bottle. That way I can align my mask easily. So I'm going to stack 3 pieces of tape up, and I'm going to rotate that bottle around or rotate the pin around my bottle so I have a straight alignment mark. What I could do is I can actually do several of those alignment marks, especially if my invitation has a lot of text to it. That'll just help me align my design on my bottle. Now I have a target. Targets are great, especially for your boss's back or your spouse's back if you're a home-based business. Kidding. What I have here is I have simple circles and I have a cross and an X. What this is going to allow me to do, and I'm going to show this on screen for you, is I'm going to align my bottle to the nearest circle or the nearest circle in my pattern here. And I'm going to take that cross and I'm going to align it with my label. What that's going to allow me to do is determine where the back side of my bottle is. So I can actually align my stencil and actually have it centered with my label, whether I'm removing the front portion of the label or the back portion of the label. And I believe you can just simply print these out of your graphics programs. So I've got my alignment mark. I know where the front of my bottle is. If you have a choice, you want to pay close attention to where the seam of your bottle actually is. Sometimes that seam can actually go right down in your etched area. Not real attractive when it happens, but in this case, you really don't have much of a choice. I'm going to take my stencil now, and I'm going to actually create a pull tab on my stencil. What that means is I'm going to fold the self-stick material over onto itself, and that's going to kind of give me a beginning point or a pull tab to actually start allowing me to peel away my carrier lining from my resist. All right, now I'm going to turn this bottle around, and I'm going to align my stencil to about where my text is, so my text falls nicely against my alignment mark, so I know my image is not only centered with the back side of the label, but my mask is actually straight onto my glass, or at least onto my bottle. All right. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my squeegee and I'm going to compress that mask, or squeegee that mask onto the surface of the bottle. We're using our self-stick material. What that means is it's pressure sensitive, has no adhesive to it. The tighter my pressure, or the tighter the pressure against the resist, the better the bond against that piece of mask. I'm going to go back to my pull tab. I'm going to simply peel away my carrier. Now, if I'm dealing, or if you're dealing with a fairly high-end bottle back at home, what you can do is you can take either your backing liner or your cover paper to actually protect the opposite side of that label. Last thing you want to do is actually ruin your client's bottles by messing with that paper type label. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of use my cover paper here. I'm going to take some tape and we're going to put that on that back label. All right. Any questions so far? Well, I'm having a hard time with this piece of tape, but I'm going to put this on my label. Not looking really pretty here. I don't do the Christmas wrapping at home. Any questions out there? No? Everybody good on a Friday morning? Yes? Everybody get enough coffee this morning? All right. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you're having your coffee back in your shop. All right, so I've got my label protected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tape off my resist. Now typically you can use the painter's tape, which is a good tape to use, but with painter's tape it's not real sand resistant. Because we're going to be blasting deep into this bottle, I'm going to use our Resist blasting tape. It's a ribbed PVC tape, and I'm going to put that on the bottom of my bottle because my design is fairly close. Along my sides. Now again, as a pressure sensitive stencil, the sand is really going to compress that mask against the bottle itself. So that downward force of grain is actually what's going to hold my mask into place. So I don't need to kind of worry too much about all this negative area. I can compress that with my fingers to make sure that mask is nice and tight and flat. But you see that thin membrane on the surface. Sandblasting is actually equal parts air, equal parts sand blasting against the surface of that mask. So it's going to compress that stencil flat to the surface. If you use your wire wheel roller against that membrane, what that does is that perforates the membrane. It just ensures that you don't have any air that gets trapped underneath that stencil and create a lift against your center letters. That make sense? So lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a glove, and I'm going to actually just put a simple latex glove over the top of the bottle. Last thing you want to do is get to the point of blasting and actually have sand in the cork of your bottle or on your wax type top. So I'm going to take this funny glove, just go right over the top, and that's going to protect my label. That'll also make sure that when I go to paint, I don't have paint that actually ruins that top of that label either. Is that funny out there? It looks funny, doesn't it? I'll agree with you there. We'll get into the cabinet, ready to blast. I'm going to come around. We'll throw this up on the screen. Let me talk about pricing really quickly on the mask itself. Our image, our mask size here is a 3 1/4 inch by 7 inch. It's about 26 square inches. Roughly at about 7 cents a square inch, this mask is going to cost you about $1.80, about $1.85 a stencil. So I've got $1.85 into my project so far, plus a little bit of labor. I've got a fairly inexpensive bottle here. At the end, we're going to add some paint, and we're going to actually add a lot more value to this piece just by giving it a painted surface. Let's get into the cabinet, all right? So I'm going to come around to our 2034 VXA, show that for you out there in our streaming world. Thank you for streaming with us. Now, I've got a very tall cabinet, and I'm not quite this tall. Let me tell you a little bit of a few features about our 2034 VXA. Number one, it's a seam welded constructed cabinet. So I've got complete seam welded construction. An epoxy powder coated surface. I've got a front door or two side doors, a right and a left door here for entry and exit. Now this is a pretty tall cabinet. We're not all the same body height or the same body type, so we actually manufactured at Resist a system that's a built for you concept. Rather than you making some sort of body adjustment to the system that you're working on, we've made a unit to where it'll actually adjust to your perfect body height. So I'm going to lower this down to where my elbows go about parallel with the floor, and that would give me a perfect body height. So it gives me good ergonomics. Just hit the switch here on the side, up or down. Going to take my bottle, go ahead and put that into my cabinet. For those of you with us this morning, you'll be able to see this on screen. For those of you online, we'll have that camera pointed at those screens so you can see as well. Now again, I'm using our 5mm self-stick stencil. That's going to allow me to blast aggressively against the surface of that bottle, blast quickly. I'm going to be blasting at about 40 pounds of pressure with our system. The way our system works is you basically step on the pedal. We have an air mixing valve, a sand mixing valve that's going to create mixture at the end of that nozzle. That sand is going to propel out the end of that nozzle. It's traveling about a little over 100 miles an hour. So as that grain impacts that bottle, that's going to give us a lot of depth fairly quickly. So I'm going to put my hands in. You guys see that on screen okay? I'm going to step on my pedal, and I'm going to use this kind of a wider back and forth motion. I'm going to let that membrane kind of just dissipate before I move into a little bit closer blast. So I'm blasting parallel with the bottle, straight on 90-degree angle. Again, blasting at about 40 pounds of pressure. And I'm just going to use this slow, steady sweeping motion up and down across this big negative area. Now, the depth is all determined by how much time, how much patience that I have on this piece. So we want to resurface a lot of this bottle. So we're going to be in the cabinet a few moments to actually get this whole piece done. So I'm keeping my nozzle straight parallel with my bottle. I'm using a slow, steady sweeping motion. Now I'm kind of working just the, going to concentrate just on this open area here. The rule of etching is the slower that you blast, the faster you finish. And what that means is that's allowing the sand to just erode the surface of that bottle. Now it's hard to determine, it's actually hard to see the depth that we're creating here, but we're actually getting quite a bit of depth against this bottle. And one kind of secret to doing wine bottles, if you actually concentrate around some of this negative text, it'll actually give an appearance that the whole bottle is a little bit deeper than it actually is. So you're kind of working just the negative text here a little bit. To just give a bit more of a perception of depth throughout the whole piece. I'll pass over this once or twice more and we will call it good. We'll go on to our painting segment. Does anybody have any questions out there? Just shout them out. We are using 150 grit. The question is what abrasive that we're using. We're using 150 grit aluminum oxide. The blasting medias that you can actually use would be aluminum oxide or silicon carbide. Doesn't really matter, it's more of a preference. But 150 grit is a good multi-purpose grain. If I were doing a lot of this resurfacing and I wanted a little bit more texture to my bottle, I might consider using like a 120 grit to give me a little bit more tooth, a little bit more depth. especially if I'm looking to do something a little bit quicker. So this piece looks pretty good to me. One final pass. And as you can notice, the technique that I'm using here is just slow, steady sweeps across the image itself. The last thing you want to do is just kind of blast all over the place and get some inconsistent depth. So I think that's good, at least for this demonstration. I'm going to clap my hands. Going to open our cabinet, pull this bottle out, and now we're going to go on to our painting segment. So as you can see, we've got a nice good depth onto my bottle. Yep, as long as you don't lift my stencil there. So a good bit of depth. Now, if I wanted to go deeper, it's just a matter of time. I just need to spend more time in the cabinet. I could actually go quite a bit deeper, but I don't want to bore you too much with the time inside the cabinet. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of our paint. The type of paint that I like to use is the Krylon Premium Series Chrome when I'm doing a wine bottle. There's lots of paint choices out there, but for what my demonstration is here today, I like the Premium Series Chrome or the Premium Series Gold. So I'm going to take my my glove, and I'm actually going to hold this bottle. Actually, I put the glove on the wrong hand, so I'm going to transfer this glove to the other hand so I don't get too much paint on my glove. Now the key to painting is, number one, is to wear your Sunday best and not get paint all over your suit when doing it. No, seriously, the key to painting here is painting very quickly or in short bursts from every angle. Most of the time, I find when people go to paint, they take their spray can and they just start laying on that nozzle and they flood that paint, or they flood that etched area with paint. They'll let that dry, they'll go to peel it, and all that paint will just simply peel away from the surface of the bottle. So in this case, I'm going to go with very light spray. So a little bit hard to do here. I'm going to spin around this side, and I'm going to paint from every angle, right, left, top, and bottom. Going to kind of test my nozzle, see how much paint's actually coming out, and I'm going to paint really lightly. As you can see, that's one angle. I was only on that nozzle, if you could hear, just very short bursts. I'm going to come over the top. Okay, now my bottle almost looks completely painted, and I've only painted from two different angles. You can see that on this side, just a real quick burst of paint. So I'm going to paint from the bottom this time and finish it off from this opposite angle. Now, one thing about paints, especially the Krylon paints or other paints that you might find in spray cans out there, is they're high pressure paints, meaning the material itself in the spray can comes out very quickly. It's a very high pressure paint. If you find a good, say, mural artist paint, they're a low pressure paint, so the paint comes out much slower, and you can actually use different tips to the nozzle. So the paint's actually going to come out a little bit slower. But using these spray cans, you've got to paint very quickly because it does come out very fast. So as you can see, got good coverage. I don't have any paint that's actually running onto the design or the bottle area. You see that on this side? Not quite dry. The way I would test to see if the paint's dry is I would touch the surface. If I leave paint on my finger, then I know I need a little bit more dry time. I'm going to come around to the end of my table or the other side of my table. I'm going to actually hit this with a little bit of a hairdryer, and we'll go into our cleaning stage. So I've got Uncle Art's hairdryer. If any of you out there know Art Aguilar, this is his hairdryer. So he's allowed me to use it this morning. So I'm going to dry this paint. The good thing about the Krylon paints that I like is they're actually a very quick drying paint. I find that the other brands of paint tend to dry really slowly. and they also seem to be a little bit more rubbery. So that rubbery type paint, when you go to peel off the surface of that mask, sometimes that paint will come up along with it. But the key again is painting in light coats to avoid that from happening. So I'm going to actually start to peel away my mask. I like to peel the stencil away kind of face down, and the reason that is you'll start to see this sand and a little bit of dust that kind of comes up off the mask and the tape. If my paint's a little bit wet, I don't want that dust or that grain to actually get stuck into my painted surface. So I'm peeling that away. Peel away the rear surface, and we've got a little bit of cleanup work to do here. So what I'm going to do to kind of get all the center area away, so I'm going to take a towel, I'm going to grab a few razor blades, and I'm going to shave off the surface of that mask. So this is going to take me just a little bit of time, a little bit of skill here to make sure I don't jam that razor into that opened etched area. I'm going to just kind of shave this away as easily as I can. Now what you can do, let's just say, for example, you do have a lift off, or you say you've gone a little bit too deep in this negative kind of text area. What you can do, which would look actually kind of cool, is before you go into your painting stage to actually peel away this raised letter text. Do a frost or a blast over that raised letter text and actually go back through and simply just paint over that surface. So it would actually give you kind of an embossed effect into the bottle. So you don't always have to leave clear glass. So you can actually get a little bit creative when doing your personalization pieces. These larger areas I can just kind of lift up out of the way. Another cool thing to do with this, say with this surfboard, to give it a little bit of contrast, is to say take a little bit different color and actually hand paint in, say a nice blue, a nice yellow into the body of that surfboard, just again to give the piece a little bit more contrast. You can see the benefit of using that self-stick stencil is it peels away so easily from the surface of our bottle. I can actually roll that away with my fingers or my hands, but I like to kind of shave it a bit to get that started. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another clean towel, some glass cleaner. I'm going to paint this, pass it around, let you guys see what we've done. Any questions at this point? Again, self-stick 5mm, we've got about $1.83 into this mask. The value of this bottle at this point could be anywhere from as low as $75, maybe as high as $200, just depending upon who it's going for and how much time we actually have into this bottle. Typically with a mask like this or a resurfacing of this size, we're actually taking a lot more time. Typically at home, you're going to be doing commission etching, which is maybe a happy birthday, an announcement, a line or two of text. So we actually kind of did something a little bit out of the normal here for this bottle. I want to take this out, pass it around. Very nice bottle.
I'm guessing you wouldn't want to do that with champagne bottles.
No, champagne bottles would be just the same. You're really not breaking the strength of that bottle. It would actually be a long time before you actually go through and break the strength of that bottle. So as you can see, got a nice good bit of depth into this bottle. Pass that around, you guys see that? Looks good. Happy with that piece. Now we're going to actually auction this bottle out. So we're going to start the bidding at $5. Do I hear $5 out there? You can go ahead and, you've got a $5 out here. You can go ahead online. You can actually go ahead and post your bids. No, I'm kidding. I want to give this bottle to somebody to actually put on display. Can I give this to you, Peter? Thank you. You're welcome. Welcome. And I want to thank you guys for coming. Obviously, you missed this particular show. Get to a show near you. Thank you very much.